Hello, hello. Happy Friday to everyone. A true pleasure. Hopefully, you are home, indoors somewhere nice and warm, out of the snow. I want to thank you all for joining today's podcast. Got a really good one lined up. My name is Charles McNamara. I am the Director of Operations at Guardian Group Services. Today, we're going to talk about something that is very important. Might be important for those who are in the security industry. Maybe they are trying to find a second job, help make ends meet, put a little money into savings and into some investments. And we're going to talk about helping individuals get a security guard license for the first time and get employment as well. I'm looking forward to today, folks. At Guardian Group Services, we really try to put helpful information together. We do a ton of different training classes. We do security training and fire safety training. We do the FLSD course, the F80 for shelters. We do CPR and first aid. We do basic self defense. We do the concealed carry. We do the armed guard training. So we always try to put good training forward. But what about after training, right? Because what's at the end of the road? Most people want to get a job that pays well, or they might want to transition and move up within their industry. So if you are looking for some quality training, check out our website. It's down at the bottom. It'll be rolling through the ticker throughout today's podcast, guardiangroupservices.com. And today's guest is a great guy. Looking forward to chatting with him, and he's here to help you folks. Edmund de los Santos, good
Oh,
morning.
yes, sir. Good morning, buongiorno, greetings, salutations, happy Friday to each and every one of you viewing and listening to us right now. It is a pleasure to join Mr. Charles McNamara in this podcast. So let's get this show on the road, brother.
Yeah, so you and I have done a few of these before. We've had some serious ones, we've done some fun ones, and today I think it's going to be a mix of both. I think today's going to be very educational, but also very informative.
Agreed. Yeah,
And I think I was looking at my notes. We've been putting this together for about 2.5, 3 months now,
that's correct. Yep,
and
yep, yep.
we both took a lot of time. And I know you're super busy. You are meeting with hundreds of people a day. Getting thousands of resumes, and we're going to talk about how do we help those folks? And that's your
Mhm.
world, in recruitment and placement, and you have all the connections. So, folks, I will be putting up Edmund's contact information throughout the podcast. Feel free to write it down. I'll keep it at the bottom. Jobs at guardiangroupservices.com. If you are going to send your resume, make sure that you send it to jobs at guardiangroupservices.com. Make sure that your information is up to date. We're going to talk about some of the bad resumes and pitfalls that people run into today. Very, very important. One little spelling mistake, your resume doesn't make it, right? Or a phone number doesn't work. You don't get a call back. So we're going to talk about those things today. Now, for those who might be tuning in for the very first time, it's a live, interactive podcast. If you got questions, we've got answers. So just type them down in the chat. We will post them up. We're going to keep it focused on security training and security employment, mostly in New York City and New York State, because that's where we work out of, and every state is a little different. So we're going to talk about the little nuances. Number one, probably the most important thing, what's required to work in security in New York State. And that's pretty simple. I mean, I'll kind of speak to that. I know you're going to jump on that as well. In New York State, you must take required training classes and you have to get fingerprinted specifically for security guard. Sometimes people will just take the class and they think that's it. Sorry, folks, you're missing a couple of steps. You got to do the 8 hour pre assignment. You have to get fingerprinted specifically for security guard. And then you have to mail everything to New York State. It's that simple. Very easy process. We have a package. We can help you with those things. But to get a license, those are the steps. There's a lot of fake fugazi schools out there. We always tell people be careful. Make sure that you go to an approved school. Even if you choose another school and you don't choose Guardian, make sure that they are a certified New York State DCJS training school. So, Edmund, the requirements to become a guard. I talked about the licensing piece, but what are employers looking for?
So nowadays, Charles, employers are looking for individuals. not only that have their security guard license and things of that nature, or even their, their certifications, but they're also looking for individuals that have customer service background. And this is something that I believe that we as an industry, right, as a security and fire, fire guard and fire watch industry, have to do better at articulating and have to do better at promoting and advertising and communicating for those that are aspiring to be security professionals. Um, you may have very good customer service skills, but you might not know necessarily how to do de-escalation, right? Which is a primary focus of being or becoming a security guard. Get your training in de-escalation. Know how, know your techniques, know your different uh, um, ways of going about how to de-escalate a situation when it gets tense, when it gets to a level where it really could become a problem, not only for the employer but also for you, the employee. But if you have particular experience doing customer service, that is welcome. Then here's the reason why. Within security, there's different job paths. It's not only about monitoring a particular venue, a particular facility, making sure that everything is copacetic. You're also, and here's a perfect example. Let's say if you're working security for a corporate building, you are greeting people that are coming in and out of the building. For that, you need to be very approachable to a certain degree. You also need to be aware of how to, provide instructions. You need to be very amicable. I wouldn't say affable, but very amicable. So meaning approachable as well. Right. So for that, you need a background in customer service as well. So we've seen an uptick in that, particularly within our partners asking for candidates of that sort.
Yeah. You talked about stuff, and we're probably going to get into that in the next question, which is a perfect segue. We got a couple of people already in the chat, a couple of agencies. Good to see you, folks. You'll kind of see me look this way and look this way. I am working right now. My boss is right over there, so I've got some stuff going on here. I've got Edmund on this side, but we got folks tuning in. They wanted to say hello. Edmund, someone mentioned to you, thank you for helping put this chat together. We got one of our instructors, John. Good to see you. Folks, if you have questions or you just want to type something in the comments, we will pin them and put them up here. So, Edmund, you brought up some really important stuff, kind of like on the next segue.
Sure.
I talked about just getting the license for New York State, which is mandatory. You have to have a security guard license, folks, to work in New York State. Now, it depends on the contract. They may ask you for additional things. They may want you to have a CPR certification based on the location. They may want you to have a fire guard license, depending upon where you work. So that could be like the FO1 for impairments. That could be the FO3 or the FO4 for a place of public assembly. And New York City is always busy, man. There's always a show, there's always a concert, there's always a game going on. I can't talk about my teams; they're just getting beat up, man. The Rangers, the Knicks, those are my teams. Yankees baseball season's coming soon. They're always hiring for security. It's a constant, steady flow of hiring. So when we talk about, the specialized fields, you said it, and then I'm going to let you elaborate because I truly feel it's such an underrated skill. And it's hard to be taught to be empathetic and to de-escalate situations, especially in security, because a lot of times you're kind of being the first call to go handle something. Someone who
Yeah.
might be intoxicated at a show, or maybe someone who's trying to trespass into your building, or maybe someone who doesn't want to leave. Now's a good example. It's freezing cold outside. No one wants to wait outside. So they might wait in your lobby, but the building doesn't want them to hang around. De-escalation is so important. Edmund, I'm going to let you talk about some of the specialized roles as well.
Sure. And Charles, thank you for bringing about the additional certifications as far as that is concerned, because we have seen an uptick in our
Yep.
business partners, employers that we work with in requesting or preferring security guard professionals that do have a first aid or CPR certification, as well as some type of fire guard certification. I'm sure that, through the conversation, we'll, go back and remind everybody in reference to fire guard specifically, because there has been a tremendous uptick in our business partners, asking
Hmm.
about that as well. But yeah, to your point, you can't teach it. You can't really teach how to be empathetic. You can't teach how to be considerate. You could maybe maybe watch a couple of videos in reference to how to bring that out about if you already have that skill
Sure.
trait, but you really can't teach it. There's different specialized roles, to the point that you brought about, Charles, and I'll bring some, to example. For security guards that are looking to either go into shelter work, for example,
Hmm.
that is very specific, right? That has a type of personality that is required, right? And type of trait that is required to work there, right? Because you're dealing with different types of personalities and people that are dealing with different circumstances at this
Sure.
time. That's very different to the
Yeah.
example that I mentioned earlier during the conversation, Charles. That's very different than a person working at a corporate or residential building, right?
Absolutely.
Where you
Absolutely.
are really hinting at the notion of, we want the person working at a corporate building, at a residential building, or even in a financial office, as far as that is concerned, to have exceptional customer service skills. Those
Yeah.
are two different examples. Go ahead, bro.
It's funny because as we just started talking about that, I pinned it and I put it back down. But one of our students, and I know who this is. I don't want to say their name's a good guy, good friend of mine. I'll put him on the spot later on. But he said, get a fire guard license. They pay more money when you have the fire guard license, which is true. Um, I am not your employer, but typically when you do get a fire guard license, yeah, they'll pay you a few more bucks. And he beat me to it. He put it in the chat. The FO1 is for impairments, sprinkler and standpipe and fire alarm systems. FO2 is for the shelters. FO3 and FO4 places of public assembly. Yeah, folks, not hard. Not hard at all to get a fire guard license. You got to do a little bit of studying. You got to read that booklet. Um, YouTube University, that's my place to be. You can check out fire safety videos. I mean, we have a ton of stuff on our page, but you got to look at it, folks, as an investment in yourself, right? You spend a little bit of time and a little bit of money to really build a path for your career in the industry. So, not hard to get. It is easy. Yes, you will have to do a little bit of work. Um, we talked about specialized roles. Um, Depends on the site, but I always like to say that security guards who are looking to stay in this industry and really make it a career and make it their home will typically fall into like one or three of these categories. And sometimes they might do multiple jobs like this. Security guards might take a path that leads them to become a security manager. A lot of times it's just, you know what, Charlie, you've been at the site the longest. Now you're the manager. Congratulations. Hallelujah. You're now the boss. But there's not a lot of formal training that goes with that. So I always tell folks you want to take that role, but build your skills because it's different than being a security guard. We have a security management workshop, and a lot of guard companies have been putting their security staff and new managers into that, so they kind of understand their role now on how do they operate with their team and how do they report back to C-suite. The second, which is my favorite, this is kind of where I made my bread and butter for many years, is in fire safety. When I got out of the military, my first security job, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I just know I wanted to make some money. So I went and I got one fire guard license, which led to another, which led to another, which led to the sprinkler and standpipe license, and then ultimately led me to get my FLSD license. And this was literally a couple of months after 9/11. It was a big responsibility, a lot of emphasis on fire emergencies, but a huge emphasis as well later down the road on non-fire emergencies, active shooter and medical emergency response. I like to say the FLSD is like the gold standard. The F80 is specific to shelters. It's a great training course as well if you are going to work at a shelter. Get your F80. They're in demand, makes you more attractive to employers and get a little bit more money. And, lastly, depends on the person and the site. A lot of security guard companies now are hiring armed guards. Back in the day, you had to be a police officer and you had to be, military was one or the other. But now, a lot of security guard companies see the value in putting their security guards in programs to have them grow and become armed guards. It is a longer process, but man, those folks sometimes can double their pay. A lot of risk involved, don't get me wrong, but We help with that process. So if you're looking to become an armed guard, we do those classes as well in downtown Brooklyn. But there's so many other specialized roles. They have canine units. So some locations they get to work with the canines directly, which is pretty fun. And if you're like a real secret squirrel type and you're really into computers, they have what's called the OCC, Operation Command Center, or Security Operations, SOC. Um, there's so many different roles within the industry. And one of the big things now, especially with technology, has become the use and deployment of drones for search and rescue, emergency response, and even now with like weather emergencies, getting them out there and surveying the properties as well. So there's a lot of different ways to grow. But Edmund, I'd like to talk, and I know you're going to really do well on this one, is the hiring gaps right now. There's a lot of people out there trying to get work, but there's some gaps. What are the best hiring practices, the shifts and matchmaking out there?
Sure. So again, it goes back to, and I attribute this to the business need, right? To the need that our employers have at this particular time. There was a point, let's say, for example, between the years of 2021 to maybe the 2024, where there was an increase, let's say, for example, in hiring individuals to work in shelters, right? Because of the connotation that the city had in reference to become a sanctuary city, and welcoming in migrants and things of that nature, right? So you always have to attach that to what's going on socially within the city. That has died down a bit. It still is fluent, but that has died down a bit. Now we see, as mentioned before, an increase in our security partners and collaborators in looking for security officers. That have, again, a customer service background that could work in corporate finance, as far as that is concerned, or in residential corporate office buildings, and things of that nature. Also, to work in different facilities that host events as well. So, where do the gaps exist in that particular aspect? Is those who want to transition, I will say this is, get yourself, again, and I'm going to go back to the business need here, get yourself some additional fire guard certifications, because we've seen an increase in that as well. There's an increase within our partners asking for security personnel with an FO1, with an FO3. Okay. Um, in reference to, Charles actually hinted at this earlier. The more certifications you have, the more the pay. Okay. So if you come in at entry level, obviously you're going to get, let's say, for example, entry level salary in reference to being a security guard, because you're trying to get the exposure and the experience necessary. But to what another gentleman highlighted during this particular session, the more certifications, the more money in your pocket. So
Hmm.
that is what we promote. That's what we advertise. So, when you're looking at that, try to think about yourself in that way, what Charles actually presented. What avenues do I have to go in, or what avenues could present themselves to me for me to grow within the industry? What additional examinations do I have to get? Because I don't want to get stuck. I don't want to stay stagnant in just being a security officer. What other tests or examinations do I have to take in order to grow myself economically, financially, and provide a good well-being for my family? So again, the
Hmm.
more certifications, the better, in that aspect. So Charles, go right
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions lined up for this later, but when we get into this later, folks, you kind of have to have an understanding of what you're looking for, not just what's out there. I see this so many times, and we'll talk about interview tips. Well, what are you looking for? Well, what do you got? Well, what are you looking for? I don't know. What do you got? You're gonna have to kind of plan on what days and times and shifts. Do a little research for the company as well. Time and money is very important to them, but it's also very important to you on those interviews. So you want to be very clear, going in there of what their needs are, right? As the applicant, right, you are going there to help fill a position within that company, which kind of leads into preference and reality. Because, man, I tell you, as a director of security back in the day, I ran a couple of buildings. I had like 5,000 man hours, responsible for about 200 people. There are a lot of different shifts. Now, if you are new to the industry and you are only looking for Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, probably not going to happen. Usually, the people that have seniority will get moved into those roles. So, you do have to start somewhere and get your foot in the door. But you have to be flexible. And if you're not, that's totally understandable. But you just have to kind of understand that, as the applicant going in, the company's needs are going to come first. They are trying to fill a shift. And they have, hundreds of people and sometimes thousands of resumes. And they want to make sure they get the best person that matches up properly. It's kind of like matchmaking and casting in film, right? You want to make it the right person in the right part at the right location. So, if you are looking to do maybe security just at a construction site, and they put you in a high rise office building that has thousands of people, may not be the best mix for both parties. But if you're looking to do security in, let's just say retail, and you're very flexible, you got to know, the reality is you might be on your feet all day walking around. So you got to have to understand the company's needs as you apply. Do a little homework, do a little history. The internet is a great thing. We're your guardians as well, folks. Right? If you follow us on LinkedIn, it's a great start. You can ask Edmund or myself questions through LinkedIn. We're pretty much always available through there, and you can kind of see the partners that we work with. Most of them, they're always hiring security, but you have to have an understanding of what their needs are. May not always align with yours, and listen, not a bad thing. You just got to move on, to the next company. But if you're looking to get into the industry, you got to be a little flexible. If you have some experience, you might know how security operations work. It's a paramilitary industry. So, just be mindful, as an applicant, putting your best foot forward, but also just understanding your needs and their needs as well. Edmund, what about, same question, shift preferences
Mhm.
and realities?
Sure. Sure. I'll piggyback, Charles, and agree with you 100% in what you just finished articulating. It is again, matching your reality versus what the company needs. Okay, I can't emphasize this enough. Charles hit it right on the target bullseye. You really have to do your homework in reference to, what are the differences between one company to another. What are
Hmm.
the particular shifts that they promote and that they're looking for at this time? Perfect example. Let's say, for example, you are a security officer that is looking for an overnight opportunity. It could be that one particular firm is offering an overnight opportunity, and it could be that you might also look to um, do some additional hours,
Yeah,
and you might want to get with another firm that might do evening shifts as well. As long as that doesn't intercede, as far as that is concerned, you can make that happen. But
yeah,
again, in order to join any particular security firm, please do yourself a favor, do some homework, focus on your reality, but also try to meet halfway and understand the company's needs as well. They might not
yeah,
meet with you at that particular entry point, but let's say, for example, it could be that you might be there for 30 days, and the shift that you desire, whether it could be a morning or evening shift, opened up. Then talk to your account manager, your job developer, as far as that is concerned, and say, hey, I noticed that an evening shift opened up. I prefer working the evening. Could I throw my name in there?
yep,
Do that,
yep,
because you also want to create some type of stability with the organization. Unfortunately, we do see that there's the industry does suffer a little bit from a high turnover. We'll get into those details in another part of the discussion. But in order to create some stability, ask, create that open dialogue, a conversation between you and the management team over in the security firm in reference to where could you meet them at that halfway point.
yeah. You bring up a really good point. One thing I want to do right now, we got a couple of dozen people here watching live. Thank you, folks. If you have questions, want an answer to something, throw it down in the chat. We'll pop them up here. As you kind of see, we pop up. Having a good dialogue is really important with your supervisors or your dispatchers or management in general. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, folks. Sometimes you may have issues or gripes and it doesn't get brought up. Maybe to your managers or your supervisors. If you complain amongst each other and management doesn't know, they can't come up with a way to resolve it. And most good managers want to resolve problems because the most part of security is you folks. You're the ones out there every single day getting the job done, and I just want to give you all a shout out. I was out there in the snow the past couple of days, and I have seen so many security guards get up, still make it into work with the snow and freezing conditions out there. I have seen a lot of the security guards over at Albee Square Mall and some of the train stations as well, where they're working. Um, get up and get out there and just get stuff done. They don't find any excuses. They find a way to just get things done. So big shout out to all of the security guards in New York City and New York State who are out there every single day doing the job. I'm a big believer in giving them their respects. Everybody talks about the police and fire and EMS, and they do a good thing as well. But man, security guards, they outnumber those folks like 4 to 1, and people forget about them sometimes. So we just want to say thank you and stay warm. Make sure you're dressing properly. Stay hydrated. Even in the cold, you got to stay hydrated. Stay safe. Um, One very particular topic, which we're going to get into, we're like right at the midway point, and this was the creation of this whole podcast: having individuals be job ready, right? What does that mean? Well, getting ready to apply, get interviewed, get onboarded, but that also means staying on the job. Now, what I have seen throughout my career in the past 2 decades in this industry, folks let their licenses expire and then they get upset, and they get very upset because the security companies cannot have them work. It's a liability issue. It's a compliance issue. Such a big problem. It also makes the client upset. So if the client loves you and they like having you there every single day, when the guard company has to pull them off, it's stressful for the employee, stressful for the client, right? Because they know the operation, they know the building, they know the guests and the visitors and the panels and the entrances and the exits. It's very, very upsetting when someone allows their security guard license to expire. That also ties into the other licenses like their FLSD license, and people put so much work into that license. Folks, do not let your licenses expire. If you get a job, your responsibility to keep your license up to date. We have a free app. It's on our webpage. It's in the app stores, the Google Play and the Apple Store. Check it out. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything, but do not let your license expire. There's so many issues that come up with that once you get the job, but we're going to take it to your side, getting individuals ready. What makes a candidate job ready in employers' eyes? This is it. This is all you, my friend.
Thank you, Charles, for actually, developing that question. And again, to your point, this is what actually drove the creation of this particular discussion this morning. One thing I have to say, and is again, Charles talked about the licensing portion earlier this week. Just to give a really primary example, we had a young lady that gave us a call. She's looking for employment. She provided me with her credentials, right? Her resume, as far as that is concerned, and she also provided me with a picture of her security guard's license and additional certifications that she had. I noticed that on her license, the expiration date read 5/2025. So I'm like, wait, how do you expect to actually work with an expired license? So I had to ask her, I had to respond to her email and say, hey, did you ever think about doing your 8 hour, annual in service as far as that is concerned? You can't work at this moment. I cannot offer you any employment opportunities because your license is expired. So once again, to Charles's point, if you are going to look for employment at this time, please make sure that all of your credentials are up to date. We here at Guardian Group Service, we offer the 8 hour annual in service, in that regard, and other types of trainings that will keep you up to date. Another thing here, um, interviewing. And I'm going to say a general statement and really try to segment it with security. You have to find a way of sticking out amongst the flock. And what do I mean by that? You might be looking for a security guard officer, but guess what? There's about 10 or 12 other people at the same time and at the same day that are interviewing for that same role. So what's going to make you stick out? So that's what one thing that you really have to think about. Is it your experience? Do you know how to talk towards your experience? Because
Mm,
your resume could look great and pretty as far as that is concerned, but you might not be able to speak towards your resume. We here, I have done one-on-ones, I have coached individuals on how they should articulate themselves, during a particular interview. Because here's the other side of the perspective. And Charles, this is something that you and I touched upon before, but I want to bring this into the attention of everybody that is watching. You could be interviewing with a recruiter or with a talent acquisition specialist that doesn't have any experience in security at all. They're looking at a couple of signal words and keywords. And if you say that, you pass to the second round of interviews. So you have to approach your interview like that person doesn't know any type of or anything of the security industry at all. Approach it like you're actually interviewing just for a general
yep.
job.
Yep.
Because if you don't, you're not going to pass that first interview.
Yeah.
That also goes for resumes as well, and I know that we'll get a little bit into that later on in the discussion, but also keywords in reference to your resume, and we'll talk a little bit about that then. Charles, take it away, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of questions are starting to come into the chat now, and I wanted to get these up there. Francois Casto's got a really good question. Um, are there challenges candidates face that slow hiring or stifle retention, such as transportation, uniform, fees, and scheduling? Great question. Um, I'm gonna say yes, and sometimes it's a hiccup on both sides. Sometimes a guard company will get a contract, like today on a Friday, that just got signed and executed, and they've got to start staffing it by Monday. So what they'll do is, they'll have a quick open house on a Saturday, and they're just trying to hire, as many people to start the contract. If they're bidding on a contract, they should have the foresight to kind of start collecting resumes beforehand. Sometimes it doesn't always happen that way. So they have to do like a mass hiring event, and transportation could be an issue. A good example is, I'm a Brooklyn guy, and I could get to Staten Island pretty easy. There's only one bus, right? If you don't drive, you got to take the bus. There's no trains that'll get you there, unless you want to take the train to Manhattan and take the ferry and then take the bus. So you kind of, circling around. So you also have to know your limits as well, right? If transportation is going to be an issue for you, it's probably not a good idea to take that specific job, right? You can tell the interviewer or HR, I would love to work with your company, but it's going to be difficult for me to make it to that location in a reasonable manner. They would much rather you be upfront about that, and they will try to find you something else than you say, yes, I'll take it, and show up 5 minutes late, because the expectation is you should be there 15 minutes early. You show up in some locations 3, 4, 5 minutes late. It's a problem, right? Because a lot of times it's face to face relief, or there's certain things happening at a certain time. The uniform question is a good one. Most security guard companies will supply you with the uniform because they want you to look and dress a certain way for their image and their branding. So most security guard companies, they will provide that uniform. Depends, you might work at a nightclub, so they'll just tell you, wear a black button down shirt and black pants, some dress shoes, look too legit to quit, and they'll tell you, you can wear your own thing. Fees and scheduling, I'm not really sure what the question is in regards to fees, but sometimes, and if I understand the question, which I think I do, if they're looking for you to have a specific license, sometimes they will sponsor people and they'll do like a payroll deduction. So if that's what you're asking, I hope I answered that. But if not, type in the chat. And I'm happy to clarify if you can let me know. That's a really, really good question. But what about other challenges? Maybe I didn't talk about, Edmund. It's a really good question.
No, I think particularly when it comes to the transportation, one of the things that we do when we pre-screen our candidates is that we actually ask, hey, are you comfortable traveling throughout the New York City tri-state area for employment, or do you have a particular borough or location in question? And the reason why we ask that question is precisely because of that. We want to make sure that the candidates, students, clients, however you want to slice it or dice it, are transparent with the people and with the security firms that they are currently
Yeah.
interviewing with. You don't want to provide them with false hope. You provide them with false hope, guess what happens? You become less reliable to that security firm. So that means if they have an open shift that they would like to actually staff individuals for, they might not consider you for that because you were not transparent and you were not, truthful in your response.
Yeah.
You're very limited in reference to what you could do and your availability in that regard. Again, going back to what Charles and I mentioned earlier in the discussion, make sure your licenses are up to date. A slow up is when you don't have your licenses up to date. I've had people before, believe it or not, that have showed up to interviews understanding that their certification, their license, better said, was going to expire in a month.
Yep.
So what happens when it expires in a month? Then you're going to start thinking about doing your 8-hour annual in service. And then they're going to bench you, right? Because your security guard license is not active. So then that means that you might miss a paycheck or two. They might restaff that shift with somebody else who might perform better than you.
Yeah.
So then that leaves you without employment. Now you have to go somewhere else and start all over. So
Yeah.
again, those are some of the big things that really, kind of like slow up the process as far as that is concerned. Charles mentioned contracts. We've had situations where a company will do like a mass interview session, and then the contract will get delayed in the start.
Yeah.
So candidates will get discouraged as far as that is concerned. What I tell candidates at that time as well is, remember, you're not exclusive to that particular firm.
Yeah.
Don't throw all your eggs in one basket as far as that is concerned. Continue to look, continue to go to other security firms to see what they might have open.
Yeah. I'm gonna get a lot of flack in the comments for this because I remember like my first gig, and I think everybody who's probably started security worked at like Yankee Stadium with a particular company, and this is like the late '90s. I'm showing my age. Yankees were hot, man. I mean, they were always in the playoffs, so there was always overtime. There was always work. Um, Now, folks, listen. If you work at Yankee Stadium, you may not get a full year's work, right? You have to understand that maybe that team or that contract may not provide a full time schedule. So, making yourself a little more marketable is definitely in your best interest. Having a good open line of communication once you interview and you are hired, staying in their good graces is important. When we, and Edmund and I, when we get into like job readiness, it really does start with you. And it's why we felt it was important to kind of have this podcast to give people tips and helps to kind of get out of their own way and not to stumble on their own feet, because sometimes the companies, right, thank you for your resume, have a nice day, and they're not going to tell you what was wrong. They're just going to kind of move to the next candidate. So it kind of leads us into the next question: what certifications and licenses boost placement speed? Kind of tying into the viewer's question, I'll just tell you right now, if I need someone with a fire guard license, I would prefer they walk in the door with that, just because I don't want to hire them and now I have to give them a couple of days to study. I've got to now schedule a day for them to go, which means I have to backfill that on overtime, hope that they passed that test. Hopefully they studied, and they got into the fire department okay, and they hope that they passed. If they didn't, now I've got to do that cycle again, which can delay a shift being covered a month or 2 months in reality. So I always say, invest in yourself. The fire guard licenses are a great way to do that. The FO1 is the one I'm going to recommend in New York City. Unless you're going to work in a shelter, then go get the FO2. But the fire guard licenses are great. Another one I would recommend is a basic first aid or CPR. That is golden anywhere. It also shows that you can, physically do a skill that could save someone's life. 30 chest compressions, two breaths, boom. 30 chest compressions, two breaths, boom. AED comes along, right? You're doing your thing. So, those are two of the certifications I would say, um, that kind of help your chances of getting employment a little bit quicker, but do a little bit of homework on the company, right? They may have, some basic requirements that you have to know, and have to have, but it's a nice feather in the cap. Build your resume, and it's a talking point for you and the person that's going to interview you, when you get a chance to meet them as well. Edmund, what about you? What certifications and license? I mean, I can listen. I'll list them all off the website. I'll
No,
give them the sales pitch.
please, no, no, no. There's nothing much to add to that, Charles. I think you hit it right on the nail. It really depends, and it goes back to what something, to something that both Charles and myself spoke about earlier in the discussion, which is, again, the more certifications you have, the better your probability of getting employment quickly, as far as that is concerned. Once you are at the door, once you're actually meeting with that talent acquisition specialist, with that recruiter, with that hiring manager, if you have it there on the spot, awesome. You do, it's great. It's good that a company may offer the option of you being able to get that certification while being employed. But at the same time, again, it will be to your benefit if you're already walking in the door
Yeah,
with that additional certification.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
So that's basically, again, what Charles mentioned. Solid.
Yeah, I think too, and you have probably done this a lot more than I have. When it's on a resume, you kind of know, all right, well, this person has taken some time to study for something, and put a goal, knock that goal down, and achieve something, right? And it could be, I would say, listen, small goals lead to big moves, but it kind of shows prospective employers and people in HR that you're setting goals for yourself to better yourself and kind of improve yourself, which kind of leads into, employment as well. Not just security, but pretty much anything in general. Yeah. Got a good question. Someone wanted to know if we can directly hire a security guard from Pakistan. That's a good question. The short answer is no. Because, as we said earlier, to work in New York State, you must have a valid New York State security guard license. So we do the training online. We were the first school get approved by New York State, kind of offer the stuff online. It's a live class with a live instructor with other students. It's going to be something where you're reading off of slides, you're interacting the same way you would in person. But you have to also get fingerprinted, and then you also have to mail the application to New York State. So if you have a valid New York State security guard license, that is how you would get hired. We do get some people out of state often. Recently I remember some people from Tennessee and Texas who are, moving to New York. So you could be out of state, out of country, but once you get to New York, you do have to have a valid security guard license. It's one of the great things, about doing the training classes online. You can do them anywhere. Now, into the dungeon in the dark area. What are some resume red flags? I have a whole laundry list of these things.
Shoot, we
And
could
that
go into
just
this nauseum.
my personal preference, right? When it's not formatted properly, um, or, there's like 8 pages on a resume. I don't have time to read 8 pages on a resume. Give me your blurbs in 1 or 2 pages. When we meet, we'll talk. Um, those are just my pet peeves. I am a busy person. My most valuable thing to me is time. I do not want to read an 8 page resume.
So I want to piggyback off something that Charles just finished mentioning, everyone, and I am going to say this as an HR professional. Charles hit as something really, really specific, right? How long your resume is. So just to give you a little bit of a fun fact, and this fun fact was actually published in a survey that came out in 2024. HR professionals, the average time that HR professionals take to read a resume is anywhere between 15 to 30 seconds. Again, I repeat, the average time an HR professional, recruiter, hiring manager, talent acquisition specialist takes to read a resume, 15 to 30 seconds. So here's Some of the resume red flags that we have encountered: individuals that are looking for jobs within security and have not placed the fact that they have their security guards license currently on their resume, have not placed that they have the 8 hour or the 16-hour certification on their resume. How am I supposed to sell you to a company if those particular details are not placed in the document? Similar to an individual that is looking for, let's say, for example, work at a shelter. If you already have your FO2, but you haven't placed that on your resume, how do you expect me to sell you to the hiring manager that is offering that opportunity? Please make sure that all of your certifications are listed on your resume. Charles mentioned formatting as far as that is concerned. Again, when it comes to format, we do not have time to look at an 8-page resume. If we do not have time to even look at a 3-page resume, we typically mention to candidates, as far as that is concerned, try to build yourself 3 different resumes. One for general use, right, that you could take to multiple employers in multiple industries. Another one that is very specific. You could have one that is very specific to security, as far as that is concerned. And within that resume, make sure that you use keywords that pop out at the person, at the recruiter, at the talent acquisition specialist that is reading your document, right? There's popular words. You heard Charles mention it previously in the discussion: de escalation, surveillance, monitoring, right? We talked about customer service. Make sure that your resume is popping out with those key terminologies. Because guess what? If you're applying directly on the site's website, your resume goes into something called the ATS system, which is an applicant tracking system. The applicant tracking system actually sifts through your resume and sees if you actually were able to place those keywords within your resume. If you were not able to place those keywords in your resume, specifically when it comes to security, you will not be considered and you will not get a call. One of the things that that HR, let's say, for example, or a lot of the critique that we get from candidates is, well, nobody ever gave me a call or anything of that sort.
Mhm.
Remember one thing: you're not the only one being interviewed that day. You know what I mean? It might be a team of one or a team of two. So you got to give that person time not only to read your resume. Another thing, going back into the resume specifically, it might be that your resume just did not meet the requirements to get you to actually come in and interview. Again, keywords. You might be missing the certifications within your resume. You might, even from an experience standpoint, my apologies, from an experience standpoint, not meet the required experience that they're looking for. So once again, make sure that on your resume, your certifications are listed, that your security guard's license is on your resume. If you're looking for security guard work, to Charles's point, if you have additional certifications as far as the first aid or CPR certification, please list it. If you have additional fire guard certification, please list it. It is going to
Mhm.
work for your benefit. Also, from a formatting perspective, what Charles mentioned, I will die on my sword about that. Please format it. I do not want to see, or Charles doesn't want to see, or any HR professional doesn't want to see a 8, a 5, or even a 3-page resume.
Yeah. You bring up some really good points. Some people are putting some notes in the chat. I don't know if I can get to all these. These are really good. Some people said, be careful with resumes that have funny email addresses or sexy email addresses. Yeah, that's definitely not good. I've gotten plenty of them over the years. Someone might be a teenager when they create their first email account and they put something wild and crazy. Be mindful of your email addresses. I've had some very provocative email addresses come across my desk. Not a good look, right? So I always say try to keep it like your first name, last name, or last name, first name, something along those lines. Another student put, and this is a good one as well, something very important. Be very mindful about your email address. Sometimes people will put a zero instead of the letter O, right? So it kind of looks the same, but if you're talking to an employer or an HR person on the phone or face to face, you want to make sure it's very easy for them to read and capture. That's kind of why I say go with the last name, first name, or first name, last name. Just a little bit easier on the eyes, and there's less confusion. Same thing happens, sometimes with like the gamer tags, people will do like the little I, which is a capital I or an L. So it's just kind of hard to see there, right? The I's look like an L, L's look like an I. And remember, right? You write it, you'll regret it. Okay, you write it, you'll regret it. Um, Sometimes people will put a Z instead of an S. So, that is very important when you're trying to get your best foot forward and your best information out there. You want it to look clean, look sharp, and smooth. Um, Someone put this as, and this is important, typos, right? If you might have a good resume, but you have a couple of typos, might just get moved to the bottom of the pile. So, like if you have a fire guard or security guard, right? Make sure that you're putting the word together and it's spelled properly.
I want
There's
to, and
so many
Charles,
free resources to this.
yeah, and Charles, I want to actually commend the person, and I'm also going to mention something to that person also that wrote that particular comment. You speak about misspelling words and typos. Fireguard is misspelled on that particular sentence, so
Yeah, I think that's why they did that.
that's why they did that. Awesome, thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I generally say, right, listen, folks, if you're working in security, there may be a chance, there may be a time you're called into court. You have to go testify, but what they're going to do is they are going to take all of your logbook entries, your incident reports, and and you have to be able to articulate, speak verbally on certain things, but they're also going to read your reports. So they may bring those things into question, right? So you don't have to write like a full legal report, but just something to keep in mind. Other things for red flags, and I feel that these items that Edmund and I are going over are very important. It just kind of helps you stand out a little bit. Making sure that you have an up-to-date telephone number. I can't tell you how many times I would get an email address, great resume, and it's a phone number that they had from 10 years ago that they forgot to update. Also, people save their email resumes like in a job platform like Indeed or Monster or some of these, and they forget to update it, right? So they'll just hit send, and like Edmund said, they'll go out. They're not getting any hits because it's not an up to date resume. So be mindful, right? If you use an electronic platform, I always say, do a cleanse like once a year. Make sure you got your most recent up to date resume out there. Even if you're not looking, it's just a good practice. Kind of just see what the market has. The security industry is always changing. So you might be at a place that you like, or you're just kind of looking for a second job, and you'll see what you're doing is good, but there might be other opportunities out there as well. The other really big one, right? If a job is posted, must have, must have, you know, 3 or 5 years experience. If you've never done security before, maybe you shouldn't apply
Thank you.
because you'll
Yeah.
get a little frustrated. Hey, I put my resume in. Well, the company is looking for something very specific, and it could be at the client's request. So they'll get the resumes. You'll never hear from them again. Or it might say be computer literate, because it might be a position where you're processing 100 guests and visitors every day, so you have to be very proficient with computers. Some companies might be willing to train. They might. I don't know. It's up to them, but just may not be a good fit. It's all about matchmaking, making sure it's a
Mhm.
good fit. Edmund, any others? What do you
Yeah,
think?
Charles,
Resumes?
I want to piggyback off of something that you just mentioned a couple of seconds ago. Folks, there is a difference between the word preferred and the word required. When you heard
Hmm.
Charles mention the word must, that means that is required. If you hear the word preferred does not mean required. Preferred means that yes, the company would like the candidate to have that, but if the candidate doesn't have that, that's okay. They will still interview you, and if you do very well in your interview, they will actually place again a job offer on the table. But again, there's a main difference between required and preferred, and to that degree. Again, also another red flag, make sure that if you're going to place employment, right, work history, make sure that your dates are correct.
Yeah.
as far as that. Just again, just
Sure.
simple thing again to Charles's point. If you're gonna do a cleanse, just make sure that on your resume the dates for your employer, for your work history and your past employment are correct.
Absolutely. I always tell folks too, you should have the dates. You may not know the exact, I started, March 17th in 2002. Just put March 2002, right? You don't have to have the exact physical date. And a contact number. They are most likely going to call your references. They are most likely going to check with previous employers. So, kind of ties into the next question. What are some turnover problem areas? Well, depends on the site. I know in this industry sometimes things happen because it's a face-to-face job. Your relief doesn't show up on time, and now you get stuck doing a double, and then you're doing a 16-hour shift and you're trekking back out in the snow trying to get home. You only get 3 hours of sleep and you oversleep, and the company says, "Oh, you're a no call, no show," and you're fired. Right? Sometimes things are out of your control. Um, know your limits. You know how many hours you can physically work. Sometimes you're not. It's not a physical job all of the time, which could be a bad thing. If you're sitting down all day, 16 hours straight, you're most likely going to fight with the Sandman, and it's a battle you usually lose. So sometimes, people get caught sleeping on duty, or they might be a no call, no show. What are some other turnover problems that you've seen in the industry?
For some of the things that I've heard about, Charles, and then again it goes to maybe the point that you mentioned, know your limits. I will say this: know your personality. Okay, just because a particular organization may be looking for, and I'm gonna give this because I have seen this reoccurring again and again and again and again, and I understand that there was a business need for it at the time. But let's say, for example, if you know that you are a person that you're not comfortable working in a particular environment in a particular area, please don't say yes because you might have a monetary need, to pay your bills or anything of that sort. Don't say yes to that opportunity. And here's the reason why. Think about how long are you going to last in that environment that you do not want to work in.
Hmm.
Think about that. Is it are you when you think about that, think about, I may just last 2 weeks, just collect one paycheck and bounce. I can't tolerate this behavior. I can't type this, can't tolerate this type of behavior, this type of nonsense or anything of that sort. So please, when you are applying and soliciting for employments within the security industry, please keep your personality, your character traits, the amount of professionalism that you have, the things that you're willing to tolerate at a professional setting. Please keep that in mind because that is what also produces the high turnover within the industry. Folks just take the job to take the job because they need to pay the bills and anything of that sort. But guess what? You're out in 3 weeks to a month because you couldn't tolerate what was going on at the work site.
Yeah, that's a really big one, I would say too. Sometimes I say your ego, folks, is not your amigo. It will get you into trouble, and a lot of the guard companies, a lot of the folks, they know each other, right? So if they're calling for a reference, or they have a certain position, your reputation does follow you, right? So it's okay to say no, right? Maybe that particular job is not for you, and things happen, right? Just remember, it's a business industry, right? It's a face-to-face job. You have to be able to deal with people, and one of the next topics that we're going to get into, and this is something that's new to me, new to Edmund, new to the industry. Barriers for candidates, face to face interviews, getting hired. AI is all over the place. You got to understand, folks, it's a tool, right? I don't think it's going to replace security guards. It's a tool that companies will use to help them hire, help them interview, help them train. Um, we see it more and more every single day in the industry, right, Edmund? We're seeing more and more AI added into the
Correct.
pre
Yeah.
pre screening process.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it's just logistics, right? If I have an 8 hour day, I can only look at so many resumes in an hour. I can only make so many phone calls in an hour. So I have to split my day, half of it reading resumes, half of it making phone calls. And then the next day, I got to kind of set up my time to schedule people. And then, the third and the fourth and the fifth day, I've now got to interview people. So it might take me a whole week just to pre-screen somebody. That's not even meeting with people yet. And if each interview, let's just say, is 20 or 30 minutes per person, I can only physically see a handful of people. Um, some people are scared of AI. I just tell folks, listen, it's a tool. You understand it. What does it do? How does it help you? How does it help the employer? Um, but where do you see AI? What are the barriers that candidates face?
I think the one of the main barriers, Charles, is the human aspect of it, right? AI is a software, a system, a platform. Folks are not, and it could even go to even myself, we're not necessarily the 100% comfortable in interviewing or speaking to this apparatus. So
Yeah.
you're like, okay, what's going to happen after this? So if I don't say something in particular, will that actually take me out of the running or anything of that sort? What do I have to say to move forward? So please remember, everyone, that the AIs that the companies are using, they have certain filters. It is very similar to what we like to call the ATS systems that your
Hmm.
resumes are going into. They have a number of questions that they ask candidates, and based on those numbers of questions and how you answer them is how you move to actually meet with a human being, to meet with a hiring manager in the next round. In that respects, I'm gonna say one hypothetical question here that always comes up on an interview. Right, the toughest question to always answer in an interview. Actually, there's two, but I'm just gonna mention one just for time purposes. Is tell me about yourself.
Oh, I could tell you about me. I'm from Brooklyn, and I like to work. Well, I really didn't say much there, right?
Right. What they want to hear is tell me about yourself from a professional perspective, right? Who are you if you're applying for a security job? Who are you as a security guard professional? I don't want to hear that you have a dog at home called Bingo and a cat at home called Lisa. Okay, great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That adds to you, but keep it on a professional level. How many years of experience do you have? What are some of the quality traits that you bring as a security guard professional to it? That will give you the possibility of moving forward from meeting with that AI, platform or anything of that sort. And believe it or not, folks, yes, it has come into the security industry, is in its baby, is in its infancy stages as far as that is concerned, but you're going to continue to see more and more and more of it in companies' efforts to try to streamline and make the processes more efficient.
Yeah. Yeah, folks, I joke with Edmund, and he's really good. He's helped me with this process and this podcast. And that's so important to kind of game plan that interview, right? So if like Edmund asked me, tell me about yourself. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn and I do security. No kidding. That's why you're here. We know you're looking to do security, right? What else do I have to add? Well, I don't have a dog named Bingo. I got a dog named Vicky, and he's picking on the cat Lisa because we're going to talk about Lisa in a second. Lisa, everybody's like, what the heck are you two talking about, Lisa? Like Lisa,
Yep.
Lisa in the Cult
That's
Jam? No, not Lisa, Lisa in the Cult Jam. It's a program, and it's a system that companies have been using. There are many like it, but it's I would say it's kind of like the industry standard at this time. Some folks, you probably use that already, and if you're watching live, I'd love to hear your comments. Put it in the chat with your experience with Lisa, because it does help with pre-screening and interviews. So Edmund and I will tell you, write out a script. Tell us about you. A lot of times, people will say, well, you know, um, I did security and I worked here. Okay, be a little more specific. I was responsible for signing in, 100 guests each day. I was responsible for patrolling the facility. Be detailed, right, on what you do. We mentioned keywords and buzzwords that system is going to pick up on that. Like, okay, we're going to move them to the next phase, or we're going to take them out. They're not a good fit. So you have to be able to articulate the things that you have done. And if you're new to the security industry, well, how do you do that? Right? Someone who's brand new. It's my first job. Edmund, what would I say?
Yeah. I think that one of the things that you have to focus on, let's say, for example, if you see on the job description, and I'm going to be very specific here. If you see on the job description that the job is looking for exceptional customer service skills, talk about your customer service skills. Tell
Hmm.
me about yourself. How much customer service experience do you have? How could you integrate and transform that into coming into a security officer role, opportunity, or position?
Hmm.
So talk about that, talk about some of the skills. If this is your first time, again, what Charles mentioned, if this is your first time, talk about those other attributes that you have that will make you marketable and valuable to the security industry. You have
Sure.
to learn how to talk, how to learn how to segue that. And again, it goes to Charles's point: write yourself a script. If you feel like you're going to get nervous or anxious, if you feel like you're going to stutter, that you might get nervous, and making sure that your first sentence comes out well, write it out, rehearse it, script it for yourself. That's okay, because remember, getting a job is a job.
Yeah, that is so true. Um, I think everybody, for the most part, has access to maybe somebody who has a job in security or has seen someone work security, right? You can kind of, use what you know. Today, everybody's got a smartphone, right? You pull out Chat GPT and you can ask it, please,
Hey, Charlie Mac, what's up?
I am preparing for an interview. Can you give me 5 questions?
All right, let's give you a solid set to sharpen your focus.
Oh, okay.
First, what's an example of a challenge you
All right. I'm going to
survive, and
stop
how
that
can
because I don't want to get on this interview and fail while I have people watching us live. But think of the tools that can help you, right? AI is a great way to also help you beat AI. I know it's going to be Skynet pretty soon, but training is important as well. We offer training 7 days a week. We do some classes online. Most of our classes are online. We do some in person. Um, I would say when you are applying, really take a moment to look at what the company needs. A lot of times people just kind of click apply, click apply, click apply, click apply, and they don't look at what the job is, what it requires, and what the qualifications are. Um, we're here to help you as well. You have our contact information, right? Understand what barriers might stop you from getting hired. Childcare is another big one in this industry, folks. If you have children, that's great, but you have to have reliable daycare, right? If there's an emergency, an employer may not have the courage to send to you to leave a job site. Having reliable transportation is very important, right? You can't say, "And I was late because the MTA." Well, MTA is always late. We know that. Um, it's kind of one of the reasons I got into biking back again. Is the bus and train sometimes just not reliable. You got to make every effort to kind of knock out what items may get in your way. Last question. I can't believe we're at the last question. It just went by so well, so fast today. What makes a training provider like us stand out to guard companies? Now, you specifically, Edmund, have a lot of connections with the major security guard companies. They choose us not just for training, but for placement services because you're able to help pre screen, help get the qualified individuals to them. So, we're a resource to them.
Yeah, look, I think that one of the things, and one of my selling pitches to companies and stuff, when I go out and do business development on behalf of our organization, is we make it easy for you. If you're looking for additional training, you could do it from the comfort of your phone, and you could do it from the comfort of your computer. You know, and again, it goes back to also a point that we mentioned earlier in the discussion. The more certifications, the better. As far as
Hmm.
that is concerned, we're the number one in New York State to provide the type of training that we do in reference to the security industry. So I'm like, again, we make it easy for you. Those students that come in that train with us and acquire their security guard license or additional certifications and are ready to work, we collect their resumes. We make sure that they're pre-screened, that they're ready to go in reference to an interview and things of that nature. So we do the legwork to make sure that our folks are as good as possible to enter the job market and
Yeah,
to do exceptionally well in their jobs. Go ahead, Charles.
yeah, I would kind of say too, we're here to help everybody. First time getting a license, first time getting a job, and those seasoned veterans who've been in the industry. We're here to help everybody. We want to see you succeed. We want to see you do well. Um, I would always recommend, if you're new to the industry and you're doing security for the first time, do the full package. It includes the class, it includes the prints. You mail everything to New York State, and you kind of get the license right away. Fire guard prep is another option. We do a basic self defense class, and that's something that employers have been sending people to us so they can learn how to de-escalate situations. It's a certification course, so they get basic self-defense skills, and they do walk away with a legal OC spray as well. But they become so much better at de-escalating situations because security guards on the job are going to be called in to de-escalate. And if it's something egregious, obviously you're going to call 911. First responders, police are going to show up and kind of do their thing. But you really are the first line of defense in helping keep people and property safe. So we have tons of training, folks. Check our website, guardiangroupservices.com. It'll be on the scrolling. It'll be on the QR code there. If you're handy dandy with all of your tech devices, I'm getting older and older. I forget how to use all of this stuff, but the QR code's pretty easy. Get your phone, scan that, and it'll take you right to the website. So, Edmund, with that said, um, how should people get in contact with you if they're looking for work?
Sure.
How do they get interviews? What do they got to do?
Definitely. So for everybody on the line, if you're looking for work as far as that is concerned, feel free, write us an email at jobs@guardiangroupservices.com. Also, you could give us a call here at 646-767 3719. Again, I repeat, that is 646-767 3719, or jobs at guardiangroupservices.com. Again, on your header or on your subject line, please make sure that you mention
Hmm.
interested in employment opportunities within the security industry or something to that effect, right? For I can know that basically you're looking to, get work. I am going to ask you a series of questions to start pre-screening you. So please make sure that you answer those questions to the best of your ability. If you need any help doing a mock interview or doing interview preparation, feel free and ask me, hey, Edmund, do you have some additional time, maybe 15 or 20 minutes that you could schedule me for I could work out the kinks in reference to interviewing with recruiters at these particular companies or so forth. We want to make sure, similar to what Charles mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that we put you in the best seat at the table
Yeah.
for you to succeed and for you to get that employment opportunity. But you have to do your legwork as well. You have to be able to let yourself get guided as far as that is concerned, receive some constructive criticism, and be able to say, okay, with that constructive criticism, now I know what to do in order to move forward and in order to get that employment of my desires.
Hey, it's funny. I just started chuckling. I was just thinking about stuff like, how we get stuff emailed to us. Sometimes it's just, hey, I'm looking for a job. Okay, who are you? Where's your resume? What are you looking for? So yeah, folks, very important. Be specific. Make sure you have an up-to-date resume when you reach out to Edmund. Don't just put, I'm looking for a job. We know you're looking for a job. We're happy to help you, but let us help you. Folks, if you follow us on social media, like, share, subscribe, all that cool stuff. I mean, you can see we have over 6,500 positive Google reviews, and they continue to go up because of the services and because of the training that we provide. We are really here to help you. We are here to professionalize the security industry as well. Um, we're training tomorrow's Guardians today, and we would love to help train you and help you get work as well. If you are looking to become a security guard, we are here to help you. Edmund, thank you so much for your time. We scheduled like 45 minutes. We've almost like doubled that already. You know, ready to stay on for another 3 hours if I could.
Is all good. Just to conclude, and some last words for everybody. For those that are with us, once again, thank you for joining us this morning. We hope that you found the conversation informative, educational, and somewhat productive for you in reference to how you're going to approach things moving forward. But again, to Charles's point, help us, help you. Let us know where you're at in reference to your career, what you want to do in reference to security. If you want to do additional training, if you want to do employment, how does that employment opportunity, your ideal employment opportunity, look to you, as far as that is concerned? And again, and if you need any additional help, let us know where you're at. Let
Yep.
us know where you're at for like that. We could meet you there. You
Yep.
know what I mean? Don't have us just continue to pull out the strings as far as that is concerned. Try to be as forthcoming and as transparent as possible. Like that, we could provide you with the necessary help that you need.
Awesome. Those are great parting words. And folks, as I said, we do a lot of fun and educational stuff here on the podcast. It's our goal to try to do at least one of these a month, get you information to help you along your way. If you need any training classes in security or fire safety or construction with OSHA or first aid, check out our website or give us a call. Folks, stay safe, stay alert, stay alive.